Thank you. So today we will talk about approach to case of polyarthritis or approach to polyarthritis. As we were discussing about autoimmune disorders, so yeah, this one. So the polyarthritis is defined as an inflammation of four or more joints. So the causes include various self-limited illness and others that are potentially disabling and life-threatening. The history and physical examination generally provide us most useful diagnostic information, and the imaging and laboratory investigations will also help us. So, how do you want to approach a case of polyarthritis? Does the patient of arthritis? So, if he does have that is inflammation, whether it's an articular joint or non-articular joints, whether the whether the inflammation is present or not, or how many joints are involved, and whether the condition is acute or chronic. So we'll discuss it. So how do you want to go? Whether it involves an articular or non-articular joints. So articular joints involves where there is an presence of synovium or synovial fluid, or there is an articular cartilage or intra-articular ligaments or joint capsules like shoulder joint or limb girdle or whatever it is. So when there is a painful or limited range of movements, both on active and passive movements. So this is one point which you can remember, both on active and passive movements. If there is a pain, there is in the articular joint, then you can categorize it as under arthritis. Whereas in a non-articular joints, the pain is only on active movements but not on passive movements, and the point or local tenderness is present. That means the localized pain is present. But whereas in articular joints, you can see here diffuse or deep pain will be present. So these are two most important points where you can differentiate. One is painful or limited range of movements, both on active and passive movements. It's an articular joint. In a non-articular joints, whether the painful movements only on active movements, and that is localized tenderness. The other points which help us in articular joints is the presence of crepitations. The crepitations are the sounds which are, the small sounds that the bones make when the synovial fluid is lost and when the movement is done, small sound is made, that's crepitation. And the joint instability, locking of joint or deformity. The locking of joint means very restricted movements. So where the patient is unable to move or move the limb or whatever because of the pain and the inflammation, he'll be in just locked up state. That is called locking of joint. Whereas in non-articular things, you will have swelling, crepitation, joint instability are very rare. So whereas in this thing, you can see swelling, crepitation, and joint instability, whereas this, they are not present in this thing. And the examples in non-articular joints are trauma, fibromyalgia, bursitis, tendinitis. Here you can see how the synovial membrane is there and the articular capsule and joint cavity containing synovial fluid. And when the synovial fluid is lost, then you will be seeing this articular cartilage moving one against other, and you will be seeing crepitations. So when the synovial fluid is lost, there is an inflammation leading to loss of this thing, and you can see. So next thing is whether the joint has inflammation or not. So here you can see a healthy joint and the one with osteoarthritis and one with rheumatoid arthritis. You can see the synovial fluid being lost and the joints, the both articular cartilages juxtapositioned on one another. So this leads to erosions and pain when they are walking. So here you can see in inflammatory, the cardinal and systemic symptoms and stiffness is more than 1 hour prolonged and improves with activity. So this is the most important point. And in the non-inflammatory things, the stiffness is less than 1 hour and intermittent. And the lab evidence which support the inflammatory joints is rise in ESR and CRP levels. And here increases, the examples are trauma and degenerative cause. So the most important point here you have to remember is the stiffness and prolonged, and it is more than 1 hour and it's prolonged and improves with activity. If you can ask any patient with inflammatory joint pain like rheumatoid arthritis, he will be saying that, sir, I have stiffness in the morning which is relieved on movement. As I do my daily household works, the pain is being relieved. Whereas in the non-inflammatory conditions, the stiffness is less than an hour, but is an intermittent. sometimes they'll be saying of stiffness, and sometimes it not be, and it doesn't depend upon the movements, and it increases with the activity. So that's the one thing you do. The next thing is monoarticular or polyarticular. So mono is single, or oligo is 2 to 3 joints when it's involved, whereas the polyarticular is more than 4 joints. So whether it's an articular, then it's an inflammatory, then it's a mono or polyarticular. And the last thing is whether it's an acute condition or a chronic condition. So what is an acute condition? Acute condition comes under, if it's a less than 6 weeks, then it's an acute condition. If it's a more than 6 weeks, it's a chronic condition. And some of the examples are acute arthritis, septic arthritis, gout, pseudo gout, and reactive arthritis. Whereas the chronic conditions are rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, that are inflammatory conditions, and the non-inflammatory conditions are osteoarthritis, osteonecrosis, and hemochromatosis. So the 4 important points is whether it's an articular joint, whether it's mono or polyarticular, or whether it's an inflammatory or non-inflammatory, and whether it's an acute or chronic condition. So what is the history you want to take when the patient presents? So what is the history you want to take? It's whether the pain is located, the onset, the progression, the distribution of the disease, the stiffness and aggravating or relieving factors, the diurnal variations, and the associated factors. So these are the few things that we should ask the patient when he arrives to us. So the pattern of involvement in the polyarthritis conditions is very symmetrically, the condition symmetrically is seen in rheumatoid arthritis, SLE, scleroderma, and polymyositis. That is, if the pain is present in both the ankle joints or both the wrist joints or both the elbow joints, then you can term it under symmetrical at the same time. Whereas asymmetrical is psoriatic arthritis, reactive arthritis, and enteropathic arthritis, where they will be complaining of monoarticular and single limb or single joint pains. So, a pattern of inflammatory polyarthritis involving large and small joints, including hands and feet, with the sparing of DIP, that is distal interphalangeal joint. I'll show you the diagram in the next slides. Just here it is. See, this is the distal interphalangeal joint. You may be knowing it. And this is the proximal interphalangeal joint. When this is spared, the distal interphalangeal joint, and the remaining all are involved, then you can see rheumatoid arthritis, most commonly involving MCP. Yeah. And whereas the pattern of asymmetrical polyarthritis, predominantly lower limb, oligoarthritis, with or without root joint involvement, presence of inflammatory back pain, and alternating buttock pain in young males strongly serves as spondyloarthropathy, that is mostly ankylosing spondylitis. This is a classical condition of ankylosing spondylitis where you can see asymmetrical polyarthritis with presence of inflammatory back pain and alternating buttock pain in a young male, mostly seen in second decade between 20 to 25 years. So that is spondyloarthropathies, which is most commonly this thing leads to ankylosing spondylitis. Whereas the distal interphalangeal joint involvement without inflammation is characteristic of osteoarthritis. Here you can remember 2 points. Sparing of distal interphalangeal joint is seen in rheumatoid arthritis, whereas the distal interphalangeal joint involvement without inflammation is characteristic of osteoarthritis. And the involvement of the first carpometacarpal joint is also very common in osteoarthritis. And the next thing is the pattern of bilateral ankle arthritis, ankle edema with erythema nodosum is almost diagnosed of sarcoidosis or tuberculosis. This is one important line. Erythema nodosum with arthritis and ankle edema. Ankle arthritis, ankle edema, and erythema nodosum is most commonly the diagnostic is sarcoidosis or tuberculosis. This is important because India has the most number of tuberculosis patients. So this is the one thing you should remember. And the chronic tophaceous gout often presents with polyarthritis. The clue to the here is the involvement of great toe. When there is a great toe involvement and the swelling over the great toe, this is called as podagra. There is chronic tophaceous gout, and the patients may also have complete foot involvement with inflammation and swelling. So evaluation, okay, the risk factors. So what are the risk factors for this polyarthritis or any arthritis condition? You can see the age. SLE and reactive arthritis are seen in young age, and fibromyalgia and rheumatoid arthritis are of middle age. The middle age here is 4th to 6th decade or 3rd to 6th decade, and osteoarthritis, polymyalgia rheumatica are of old age, mostly in the 6th decade, after the 6th decade, or in the 5th or 6th decade. Uh, Most of the conditions are common in the women, whereas the conditions like spondyloarthropathies, ankylosing spondylitis, and gout, these are most common in men. And rheumatoid arthritis and SLE are most common in women, but most of the arthritis conditions, polyarthritis conditions are common in women. Whereas these three things, and most important of all, ankylosing spondylitis, which has 9:1 predilection for the men to female. This is the one point we should remember. And the race. Though whites are more affected, sarcoidosis and SLE are affected more in the Africans and the Americans. So associated symptoms. So here with associated symptoms, you can go with the history. The past and present history of psoriasis will give you a suggestion that it could be a psoriatic arthritis. Or when there is an involvement of eye with uveitis, scleritis, and conjunctivitis, then you can have spondyloarthritis. Then history of nasal or ear discharge. Then you can go towards a systemic necrotizing vasculitis. Whereas the history of oral ulcers, especially on the hard palate, says of SLE, while recurrent oral aphthous ulcers and scrotal ulcers suggest Behcet syndrome. This is the one point which is important. History of oral ulcers, especially on the hard palate, suggests of SLE, whereas recurrent oral aphthous ulcers and scrotus ulcer will suggest as Behcet syndrome. In the presence of diarrhea, abdominal pain may indicate mesenteric ischemia. So the important point here is presence of oral ulcers is seen in both SLE and Behcet syndrome, but whereas oral aphthous ulcers is most, and the presence of urethritis or diarrhea preceding the arthritis helps to diagnose reactive arthritis. Whereas the cola-colored urine or frothy urine can suggest of glomerulonephritis of SLE. As we discussed in SLE in the last class, renal involvement is most common and most fatal. So there you can see a cola-colored urine or frothy urine with joint involvement and pain and with edema pit, then you can most probably go towards glomerulonephritis secondary to SLE. Okay. The next is history of dry cough and presence of bibasal rales on lung auscultation. So interstitial lung disease, which is a chronic disease actually, in this patient when you can see the joint involvement along with dry cough, then you can see this is a condition where you can be seeing it in rheumatoid arthritis, or whereas ILD is particularly common in systemic sclerosis. In rheumatoid arthritis also you could be seeing this. Later it may be leading to fibrosis also, the lung fibrosis. The next, the past history of trauma, any injury or fracture or surgical procedures, or exposure to past infection, or exposure to ticks, or any medicational history. So the physical examination. The cardinal signs of inflammation can be observed. Synovial inflammation is palpated as soft, duffy swelling around the joint line. I did show you the joint, how it will be. The joint line, around the joint line, you can be seeing the synovial inflammation. In contrast, hypertrophy from bony edges, such as osteoarthritis, palpated as hard structures. And inflamed large joints have palpable effusions in the knee. The signs of fluid wave and ballottement can be elicited in the case of moderate or large effusions. On examination, bony enlargement are present over the DIP. These are called as Heberden's nodules, whereas if these same nodules are present over the PIP, these are called Bouchard's nodules, with sparing of MCP joints in osteoarthritis. See here you can see the whereas when it is involved DIP, then it's called Heberden's nodules, and when there is involvement of PIP, it's called Bouchard's nodules, most commonly seen in osteoarthritis. Okay. Dorsal or ventral deformities, swan neck deformity or boutonniere deformity are typical of rheumatoid arthritis. We will be discussing about this when we speak about rheumatoid arthritis. And the contractures may reflect antecedent synovial inflammation or trauma. You can see this is an MCP joint, this is a PIP and DIP, distal interphalangeal joint, proximal interphalangeal joint, metacarpophalangeal joint. and this is a wrist joint. So what is DAS 28 score? So this is a scoring system for the polyarthritis condition where involvement of PIP gives you 10 points, involvement of MCP gives you 10 points, and the other wrist, elbow, shoulder, and knee give you 2 points each. That is DAS 28 scoring. So I will repeat it again. Involvement of proximal interphalangeal joint is 10. Involvement of MCP is 10, and whereas the involvement of wrist, elbow, shoulder, and knee gives you 2 each. So what are the investigations that you want to do? Hemogram, erythrocyte sedimentation rate, CRP levels, renal function test, liver function test, and radiographs, that is X-ray, and then ANA profile and synovial fluid analysis. So ANA profile is the most important, and anti-nuclear antibody patterns. Each anti-nuclear antibody has different patterns, and that correlates to some clinical condition. If you can see, if the pattern is diffuse with deoxyribonucleotide protein or histones, it could be drug-induced lupus or SLE. As we were speaking, antihistone antibodies in the last class, it could be drug-induced lupus. Whereas anti-double standard DNA, that is specific for SLE, or speckled pattern with anti-Rho, anti-La, where we can see in the Sjogren syndrome, or RNA polymerase 1, or anti-centromere pattern. So this is one thing you can remember for CREST syndrome. So the important points here is double stranded DNA, anti-Rho, anti-La, and anti-centromere pattern, which is present in CREST syndrome. So how do you want to interpret synovial fluid? Synovial fluid aspiration is done, and analysis is, if there is monoarthritis is there, whether it's an acute or chronic or trauma, or suspicion of joint infection. If the effusion is hemorrhagic, uh, if the effusion is hemorrhagic, then you should see whether it's an inflammatory or non-inflammatory or articular condition, and whether the WBC levels are raised. If the inflammation and if the hemorrhage, if it's hemorrhagic, then consider trauma, mechanical, or dearrangement. If it's non-hemorrhagic, then it's either inflammatory, non-inflammatory. And if it's non-hemorrhagic and it's an inflammatory, then look for WBC levels of more than 2000 per milliliter. If yes, then it's considered as inflammatory or septic arthritis. Whereas if it's not, then it's considered as non-inflammatory condition, which could be either osteoarthritis or trauma. Yeah. So the differential diagnosis of polyarthritis, some of the conditions, infections are parvovirus in viral conditions, whereas the bacterial are Lyme disease early phase, and the reactive arthritis, this is important, it's most often urogenital infection like chlamydia, and whereas acute rheumatic fever after the infection with group A streptococcus. So these are the two things that you should remember after urogenital infections like chlamydia and acute rheumatic fever after the infection with group A streptococcus. And the autoimmune diseases, the systemic autoimmune disease like systemic lupus erythematosus, primary Sjogren syndrome, and whereas the primary arthritis are rheumatoid arthritis and psoriatic arthritis. These are the two things that's very important. And the autoinflammatory diseases like adult onset Still's disease. The important point here, autoinflammatory diseases are adult onset Still's disease. And the metabolic conditions which could be leading to is thyroid disorders or hemochromatosis or hemoglobinopathies, like thyroid disorders like hypothyroidism, hemochromatosis, and the hemoglobinopathies or sickle cell anemia and thalassemias. So the important points here are the infections like reactive arthritis is due to chlamydia, and whereas acute rheumatic fever is due to group A streptococcus. The primary arthritis are rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, whereas the systemic conditions are systemic lupus erythematosus and primary Sjogren syndrome. And the metabolic disorders like hypothyroidism, hyperthyroidism, sickle cell anemia, and thalassemia. So now we will be talking about viral arthritis. So the most 10 to 25% are due to hepatitis B virus develop joint symptoms, often with rash, and a symmetrical migratory or additive arthritis. So what is migratory arthritis? You will be seeing pain once in the knee joint, the other time in the shoulder joint, the other time in the ankle joint. It's called migratory arthritis. It will be involving all the joints. And this is usually during the prodromal stage of the disease. Chronic hepatitis B virus is associated with persistent arthritis and other immune complex disorders like glomerulonephritis. Whereas arthritis in HCV, hepatitis C virus, is an rheumatoid-like picture in two-thirds of the cases. So the chronic persistent arthritis seen in hepatitis B virus, whereas rheumatoid-like, where the stiffness is for more than 1 hour in the early mornings and which is relieved on movements. In parvovirus, acute onset of symmetrical polyarticular arthritis with proximal interphalangeal joint and metacarpophalangeal joint affected in adults. Whereas arthralgias and arthritis may accompany or follow skin eruption. So the rubella and rubella vaccine virus are associated with arthritis. The incidence is up to 30% in females and 6% in males. And whereas the onset of joint symptoms due to rubella virus is typically abrupt, occurring in most patients within 1 week of period before and after the rash. So the before 1 week of the rash and after the 1 week of the rash, there may be typical onset of joint pain symptoms. And the joint involvement is similar to that in rheumatic fever, being symmetrical and migratory. These are two important points in the rheumatic fever. Symmetrical and migratory joint involvement and within the resolution of the most joint symptoms within 2 weeks. So 3 points: symmetrical, migratory joint involvement with the symptoms being resolution in within 2 weeks in the acute rheumatic fever. So the rheumatic fever, you have symmetrical with migratory joint pains, with joint pains being resolved in 2 weeks. And the alpha virus that causes arthritis or arthralgia are globally distributed mosquito borne. And the dengue infection includes headache, muscle and joint pain, sometimes described as breakbone fever, because the patient will be experiencing the pain where when there is a fracture on bone is break, that is how much the pain will be there. So it's called as breakbone fever. So the important point is the acute, in the rheumatic fever, you will be seeing symmetrical migratory joint pain, which is resolving within 2 weeks, and the pain in the dengue infection is also called as breakbone fever, or the dengue fever is also called as breakbone fever due to the pain. In the bacterial infection, typically the bacterial infections cause septic monoarthritis. It causes septic monoarthritis, and gonorrhea causes polyarthritis in small joints in relatively early phase. So the most of the conditions due to bacterial infections are septic monoarthritis, whereas gonorrhea can cause polyarthritis in small joints in relatively early phase. So the metabolic diseases, we spoke about metabolic diseases like hemochromatosis or thalassemia or hypothyroidism. Hemochromatosis can cause progressive degenerative and inflammatory changes in multiple joints, mostly in second and third metacarpophalangeal joints. Here you can see mostly in the second and third metacarpophalangeal joints. Whereas monoarticular or oligoarticular with large joints with large effusions. So monoarticular or oligoarticular arthritis of large joints with large effusions typically seen in hypothyroidism. So now we will speak about rheumatoid arthritis. This is a chronic inflammatory joint disease with multi-system involvement. So it's just not that only bones are involved, there is a multi-system involvement, not only joints. As I was saying previously, the lungs can also be involved with fibrosis of the lungs in the chronic stages. So the prevalence, it's 0.5 to 2%, and it's mostly predicted to females, except the ankylosing spondylitis, gout, and spondyloarthropathies. Most of the autoimmune diseases that is involving joints are mostly predicted towards the females. So the worldwide distribution is higher in Native Americans, and it's most commonly seen between 40 to 70 years in women and 60 to 70 years in men. So how the etiology? So there is an autoreactivity or genetics, the involvement. It leads to activation of innate immunity and production of dendritic cells, fibroblasts, and macrophages. So there will be a migration into the lymph nodes where there will be production of T lymphocytes. Now these T cells will cause progressive immune response, chronic progressive immune response, the production of B cells and T cells normally. And in this condition, there will be production of T cells leading to chronic progressive immune response, which leads to synovial inflammation and joint damage. The onset, the typical and atypical conditions. Typical is insidious in onset of polyarthritis affecting small joints in hands and feet, and there is a fatigue, anorexia, and weakness. And there's a one point here is this: the typical involvement is it's a symmetrical. Okay, and the atypical is polymyalgia, systemic and persistent monoarthritis. So the clinical features are it is a symmetrical deforming polyarthritis. This is the point very important. Symmetrical deforming polyarthritis affecting synovium, bursae, and tendons. It's a symmetrical condition where there is a deformation of the joint with polyarthritis condition affecting synovium, bursae, and tendons. And it spreads within months to years, and there will be a Botanier deformity, as I was speaking earlier. See, here you can see a Botanier deformity and ulnar deviation and swan neck deformity. And there is presence of hammer toe and hallux valgus. And this is the rheumatoid nodules. So rheumatoid nodules, here you see Botanier deformity of thumb, ulnar deviation of the metacarpophalangeal joints, and the swan neck deformity. You know how the swan neck is like that, the swan neck deformity. And when the lower limb and the foot is involved, there is the presence of hammer toe and hallux valgus. And here you can see the rheumatoid nodules. So this is how it will be arthritis, then creates a joint and the cartilage and bones begin to self-destruct. There is an inflammation leading to self-destruct. See, this is a normal hand and this is the hand with rheumatoid arthritis. With this is the ulnar deviation at the MCP here, metacarpophalangeal joint, Botanier deformity and the swan neck deformity. So here you can see the swan neck deformity, the Z thumb, the volar subluxation or the ulnar deviation. The nodules. These are extra-articular. This is articular. This is extra-articular, the firm round mass felt in the subcutaneous tissue. And as we were saying, this is a multi-system involvement. So eyes, the scleritis, episcleritis, Sicca complex, and glaucoma. And whereas lungs, pleural effusion, interstitial fibrosis, and Kaplan syndrome. And the cardiac involvement, pericarditis, premature atherosclerosis, conduction defect, and valvular involvement. And the vasculitis, cutaneous ulcerations, digital gangrene, visceral infarction, and the neurological nerve entrapment and spinal compression. So the important points here is the Botanier deformity, the swan neck deformity, the Z thumb, the volar subluxation, and the ulnar deviation. And in the lower limb, there is hallux valgus, hammer toe, and rheumatoid nodules. These are the important things you should remember. And most commonly seen in females with symmetrical polyarthritis with deformity. So there is something called Euler criteria or ACR criteria used for the classification of rheumatoid arthritis. So how do you want to differentiate it? It has joint distribution, serology, symptom duration, and acute phase reactance as four important parameters. And the scoring is done, and more than 6 score of 6 is required. And when there is more than 6 is definitive rheumatoid arthritis. What if the score is less than 6? The patient might fulfill the criteria if over the time or retrospectively, if the data on all four domains have been adequately recorded in past. So how do you want to say the joint distribution, whether one large joint or 2 to 10 large joints or 1 to 3 small joints or 4 to 10 small joints or more than 10 small joints, depending upon the scoring is done. And on serology, you need to have rheumatoid factor and negative these levels. And the symptom duration is whether it's less than 6 weeks or more than 6 weeks. And the acute phase reactants like CRP and ESR levels. So how do you want to treat it? So we call this DMARD, that is disease modifying anti-rheumatic drugs. So again, I'll say disease-modifying anti-rheumatic drugs, which should be started as early as possible. It's better to give monotherapy, that a single drug is enough in the early stages. If it's not, then you can add one more drug and combination. So normally we start with glucocorticoids and then we follow it up with hydroxychloroquine and then with methotrexate and then sulfasalazine. So normally the patients are started on glucocorticoids first, and when if there is no improvement, then we go on to hydroxychloroquine and then on to methotrexate. So even upon giving disease-modifying anti-rheumatic drugs, if there is no improvement, then we can go for the biological drugs like infliximab, adalimumab, or rituximab, abatacept, and tocilizumab, which are the newer drugs, and infliximab, adalimumab are the drugs which are used most commonly. Here you can see adalimumab, it's a TNF inhibitor, and etanercept, which is also an TNF inhibitor. So this is how we will be giving, and the most commonly used drugs are infliximab and adalimumab, and rituximab and abatacept. So these are the four drugs you can remember: adalimumab, infliximab, etanercept, and rituximab. And the most important here is disease-modifying anti-rheumatic drugs. These are glucocorticoids, hydroxychloroquine, methotrexate, followed by sulfasalazine and leflunomide. Normally, we start with monotherapy. If the condition is not improving, then combination therapy. Next, psoriatic arthritis. Uh, distal involving of distal interphalangeal joint and asymmetric oligoarthritis, which is less than 5 small joints or large joints involved asymmetrically, or symmetrical polyarthritis similar to rheumatoid arthritis. And the most important here is there is enthesitis, dactylitis, and what is enthesitis? When there is an inflammation where the tendon joins the bone, there then you call it as enthesitis. And Casper criteria for the psoriatic arthritis is whether there is skin psoriasis is present, or previously it was present, or any family history is present, or there is any nail lesions like ankylosis, or there is any dactylitis, or there is any negative rheumatoid factor, or juxta-articular new bone formation on radiograph. This is what Casper criteria is. Here you can see it's not clear, but here you can see the nail involvement, the skin involvement here, and the joint involvement here. Reactive arthritis, as we are speaking, it is due to infection, most commonly chlamydia, and it is also called as additive arthritis. And the lower limbs are more commonly involved than the upper limbs and associated with urogenital lesions. And keratoderma belanorogica are commonly seen in palms and soles. It's mostly due to infections, mostly in urogenital lesions, and most common organism is chlamydia. And what are the signs and symptoms? It's an asymmetric oligoarticular with lower limb predilection with enthesitis and presence of keratoderma belanorogica and involvement of sacroiliitis and non-specific urethritis. Here you can see eyes involved vertebrae, that is bone, the spine involvement, the urinary tract involvement, the knee. So this is how the keratoderma belanorogica will look like. It's most commonly seen in soles and palms. And enteropathic arthritis associated with ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. And the extraarticular symptoms involve uveitis, erythroderma nodosum, pyoderma gangrenosum. And the arthritis in SLE. It's a symmetric, non-erosive, and only a few persons, like 25%, you may be seeing erosive arthritis, but mostly it is symmetrical and non-erosive arthritis, most commonly involving joints of hand, wrist, knee, or involved. See here, this is how it looks like. Next is osteoarthritis. So this is important. Osteoarthritis is most commonly seen in individuals older than 50 years. and the speed of on it's very slow. It's a chronic disease in evolving over the years. And the systemic symptoms, normally you don't see more systemic symptoms in this, whereas in rheumatoid arthritis, more systemic symptoms are involved. And the joints are painful without swelling or with swelling, or may affect symmetrical or asymmetrical, and affects both small joints and large weight-bearing joints such as hips, knees, and the spine. So the difference between rheumatoid arthritis and here is, first thing, it's a lack of the systemic symptoms, and this is can be symmetrical or asymmetrical, whereas the rheumatoid arthritis is always symmetrical involvement. And the stiffness is short-lived morning stiffness called as gel phenomena, which is less than 1 hour, whereas in rheumatoid arthritis you can see it's more than 1 hour, and it improves on activity, whereas in osteoarthritis the stiffness when starting the movement after inactivity. Radiological findings: joint space narrowing, subchondral sclerosis, cyst changes, and osteophytes. And the lab findings are rheumatoid factor and anti-CCP negative. So typical distribution of joint involvement in the form of arthritis. You can see rheumatoid arthritis, large weight-bearing joints mostly involves knees, ankles, usually symmetric, and hips very rarely. Whereas in osteoarthritis, you will be seeing the hips being involved more commonly, and the knees and the ankles. Whereas the psoriatic arthritis, it's usually asymmetric with involvement of knee and ankles. And whereas gout and pseudo-gout, the most common involvement is the foot actually, and with the ankle and the wrist. So the small joints, there is in rheumatoid arthritis there is sparing of distal interphalangeal joints with involvement of MCP and PIP. Whereas in osteoarthritis there is involvement of distal interphalangeal joint and proximal interphalangeal joint. And whereas in psoriatic arthritis, frequently the distal interphalangeal joint is involved with the nail involvement, and whereas in the gout, small joints of the feet are the most common. And the spine, only cervical spine is involved in the rheumatoid arthritis, whereas in osteoarthritis, as we are saying, lumbosacral is also involved, and in the psoriatic, sacroiliac joint is most commonly involved, and in gout, no involvement. So how do you want to go? As we were discussing earlier, whether it's an articular, acute or chronic, inflammation is present, or how many joints are involved. And depending upon that, we will differentiate whether it's, and depending upon the joints involved and which joints involved with inflammation and non-inflammation, we'll categorize under rheumatoid or osteoarthritis or psoriatic arthritis or reactive arthritis. That's it. So here you can finish it off. This is how I want to conclude. This is one slide I will go through again. The musculoskeletal complaint, if they are having both articular or acute or chronic condition, inflammation, or how many joints involved. Here you can see acute or focal or monoarticular presence. There is something called red flag conditions such as gout, septic arthritis, fracture. And there is non-articular, if there is an articular condition, whether the complaint is more than 6 weeks or less than 6 weeks. More than 6 weeks, yes, it's a chronic. Less than 6 weeks, it's an acute. Then you can consider as acute arthritis, septic arthritis, gout. And if it's more than 6 weeks, then you can see whether the inflammation is present. And when the inflammation is present, you should go and have, should be seeing for whether it's a prolonged morning stiffness, there's a soft tissue swelling, the systemic symptoms, or there's an elevated ESR or CRP levels. If there is present, then it's a chronic inflammatory arthritis, or if it's not, chronic non-inflammatory arthritis. Then in chronic non-inflammatory arthritis, or the distal interphalangeal joint, hip or knee joints are involved. If it yes, then it's an osteoarthritis, chronic non-inflammatory with involvement of DIP and all. If there is no involvement, then you can consider as osteonecrosis or hemochromatosis. In chronic inflammatory arthritis, there you can be seeing the number of joints being involved in there, whether it's a mono or oligoarthritis, or the inflammatory being polyarthritis. So if it's a mono or oligoarthritis, as we were discussing, it is TB or fungal infection or psoriatic arthritis. Whereas if it's a chronic inflammatory polyarthritis, whether it's an involvement of symmetric or asymmetric. So if it's an symmetric involvement with involvement of PIP, MCP joints, then it's rheumatoid arthritis. If not, then you can consider it as symmetrical but no involvement of PIP, MCP, it's SLE or scleroderma or polymyositis. And here it's mono or auricular, it's TB fungal. And whether if it's the involvement is not symmetric but with chronic inflammatory polyarthritis, then you can go and consider it as psoriatic arthritis, reactive arthritis, or enteropathic arthritis. So today I think we will finish it off here, and thank you.